Hey everyone, this is day 3 of building a SaaS with SaasRock. I'm getting really excited of making this type of videos because it keeps me in schedule, and maybe this is the best decision, one of the best decisions I've ever made, since it doesn't distract me of building more and more things that I don't need, but to actually add to SaasRock's core everything I'll need for future SaaS applications that I make. So let's get started. Today's video is about the XML model with some custom views and forms. In order to accomplish this, I first added some changes to the core, one of which, or the most important one, was a database performance issue, because on some models I included users or created by user, and if you have users that already set their avatar, it could potentially escalate that request to megabytes instead of kilobytes. So I changed it to user simple interface that looks like this. Before, for example, this is on the roles route, it was 6 megabytes, and after the fix, it's just 13 kilobytes. So now the application. I believe everything starts with the model, with the database model. So first, I created it on the schema.prisma file. It looks like this. An XML has a unique ID. It relates to a row and can be from an email attachment, and has a name, has an XML file, and can have or not a PDF file. And can have a UID or not. This is how it looks on XML that I'm talking about. It has a issuer, for example, this is from Google, and a receiver. This is for my company. And what I'm looking to accomplish here is to get this UUID so I can get the invoice. But that's going to be for another video. This model is for uploading manually, not from sending emails with the XML and PDF. By the way, the XML and PDF pairs look like this. So here it is, an invoice from Google. As you can see, the total is 013, and this is the XML. So we should have 13 somewhere in the total here. So it's just a Mexican thing. I don't know if this applies to anywhere else in the world, but this is the model that I need. So this, after this is created, we need to seed our custom entity. But we are not going to auto-generate these pages for creating them or viewing on a table list, or for a overview page. And we are not using custom properties, but we are going to use custom WorkflowStates, and it looks like this on the seed file. So after my taxpayer from the previous videos model, I added this new core entity name with the slug XML, and it's not auto-generated, it's not a feature, it has not an API, but it has workflow. And this is the states for the workflow. It starts with pending, then processing can be invalid or processed. So after that, since this is not auto-generated, I need to add manually my sidebar item on AppSidebar file that looks like this. After the entities auto-generated sidebar items, I added this here, which redirects to the slug. And this icon I'm using, you can use whatever, or even a URL icon. And this is how it looks on the application. Here's the icon, which is an SVG, and here's the sidebar item. So next, we want full control of our forms and views. So in order to do that, I created an XML new file that is inside the app.tenant. This is basically what I use for taxpayers new file, but as you can see here, it is automatically generated We don't want that because our XML functionality is highly customized. So here's how it will look. Starting from the default function, which is the UI in React, I copied this file, RowNewRoute, which is right here, RowNewRoute. I use a new page layout. It just has a title, a breadcrumb menu. It checks for the plan limits, and it auto-generates the row form. So I copied this function and pasted it here on the xmls.new, and I leave this, I changed this title, upload XML, and I changed this line. As you can see here, it is row form, but here I'm using this that basically just add a save or delete button if you pass an ID, and this is the input that I'm going to use, which is just files with the title XML file, and I'm going to accept XML and PDF with a minimum and maximum of 10 files. So this is how it looks on the application. So here it is. Let's try and remove this just so you can see what's this form group look like. So it's empty. So the next thing that we're going to see is the loader. The loader, we need to use the same as the entity.new because we're not going to customize anything other than the title, just for the example. So the loader is right here, and it calls the loader row new. So I pass them the slug, and where is my rows view for this slug, which is the same. But this could be customizable, like for example, you want inside a folder for invoices. And here we changed the title, upload XML, as you can see here, upload XML. So next, the action is that it is highly customized. This is how it looks first. We need to get the tenant URL based on the params. Why not get the tenant ID? Because this URL can be either an ID or a slug from the tenant, which is changeable here. So this is an easy to remember URL instead of using the ID for everything. User info just basically gets the user ID if it's logged in. We're going to use get the entity with this name. We're going to get the form, which is sent by this form group, and we're going to get the files, which are of this type, which is an array of this type. Can have a title, a name, the file, content, and the type. So we mapped this into this array, and we do a little bit of validation that at least one XML file is needed. So we're going to iterate to all these XML files, and we're going to create the row for this entity. This is a core function where you pass the entity, the user ID, if applies the linked account ID. I'll leave this for another video, but set that to null. The tenant ID, the request, and I'll get to this in a second, but this is the folio for our row. Next, I'm going to get the pending state to set our new created XMLs to pending. And then we're going to create an XML file on Supabase with this bucket and this name. As you can see here, I'm using the row.id identifier. So, and we are going to pass the media, which have the file. And if a PDF pair is found, we're going to create the PDF as well. And finally, we're going to touch the database with that info. The UUID, as you can see here, since it's on the pending state, we're not processing this XML. As I told you before, I need to read the XML and grab this. So it starts with being empty. So this new route looks like this. First, let's try and send just a PDF, and it will say upload at least one XML file. So if we upload an XML, it will redirect me to our URL's current tenant URL with the slug XMLs, which is this right here. And I'll get to this view, which is the XML's route file, in a second. First, let's create another XML, but with a PDF pair. It has to have the same name. So as you can see here, I don't have a pair for this one, but I do have for this one, and this is a Supabase stored file, as well as this one and the PDF. We can change this if we don't want to use Supabase. We can comment this or go to our environment and remove this Supabase URL. Let's try adding without Supabase. But first, let me fix this because we need the PDF pair. So let's grab this one. And as you can see, it's saved on the database, not on Supabase. So if I click on it, it will download directly instead of going to the public URL from Supabase. But we're going to store these files on Supabase. Next, let's see how the XML's route look. You will grab this from the layout from this file, which is the auto-generated views. It is pretty small. As you can see, it has a loader, which uses the loader rows view function, and action, and the title of the meta, and the rows view route component. So here on the XML's file, what I did is use the same loader because we're using this entity, and we're going to override this layout. Just as the other file, we just copied this default function and removed everything that we don't want. For example, we don't want a column selector, a view toggle, we don't want filters yet, but we want a button to add new XMLs and a row list. But I don't want to use this because we didn't set custom properties. We want to manually set them to have full control. So this is not a no-code solution, but a low-code. So here, as you can see, I'm setting the title, but this is customizable for the XML if you want to change it. And here I have the table that gets the items. As you can see here, is of type row with details. By the way, remember that each time you add a new row to your model that you're going to use, you need to set this include here. This is row with details. I'm including the XML if applies, and here I'm going to say include the property, the XML. This way, whenever we want to use the XML, we could access to these values. So this is a table component that I did or created. It is not advanced as React table or other library, but here you pass the items, and with each header you can display default or custom values. For example, I'm displaying the folio here, which is a link to the entity view route, but we want a status. As you can see here is the pending status. So we're going to say this has the name status, the title status. This is the value if we want to sort by this in the future. And this is the formatted value, so we can customize its appearance. As you can see, I'm using an already existing component, which is WorkflowState batch. Basically, this passes the current entity state if it's not null, and it sets the color and the title, like this. Next, I'm going to need a UUID column. So here is how it looks. Simple. Next, an XML file. And for this, if an XML is found, we're going to link that to the file with this download name, same as the PDF, but we're replacing the name because this name has .xml at the end. And finally, a custom created by. Why custom and not use this one? Display created by user or created at, because XMLs in the future can be created by emails. So whenever someone sends an email with XML or PDFs, we're going to create XMLs, but that's for another video. But I'm just preparing this column to see if it's created by a user or an email attachment. That's why on the model I have this as nullable, because it can either be from an email attachment or manually by a user. And finally, we're going to use pagination. This is one of the benefits that come with using the custom entity, even though we're not using custom properties or auto-generated views, but you get pagination, as we can see here. We're going to add some more. The default is I believe 10. So here we have our pages. We can manually set this to 1 or to 2 or next page, which is empty. And this is one of the benefits. Next, permissions. So first, let's see if, let me tell you about this recently new added thing. The default visibility for this entity is everyone on the account. This is also a constant. Default row visibility, you can change this or manually set for each entity that you create. So each time we add an XML, it will be shared to everyone, but we can set this to private or public. So let's try this and see who are the members of this Acme Corporation. So we have me, John Doe, and Luna Davis. So if we go to the roles, let's remove them from the super user, because super user is a hard-coded role that bypasses all permissions. You can change this as well, but basically you search for super user, and as you can see, it's hard-coded in some places. For example, permissions helper, if it's created by this user or it's a super admin or a super user, it bypasses the permissions. So that's why I'm removing them, and I'm going to test this XML, the number 10. I'm going to share it to, I'm going to make this private, So number 10 shouldn't be available for John or Luna. Let's log in again with Luna and see if we have number 10. We don't. So that's part of the permission benefit that you get by building on top of the custom entities. Next, the plan limits. So let's log out and log in as our main user. And since I'm an admin, I'm going to go to pricing plans and create the base plans. You can change these on plans server, but this is just for show. I'm going to edit the free plan and say that I will have only how many XMLs we have right now? We have 13, so we can have only 14 XMLs, and let's set this to max. And this is the entity name. This is tied to the entity name, so make sure that when you create your entity, you set this right. And let's set a value of 14. And let's save this and refresh this page, and let's try to add the 14. As you can see, I need to have a subscription now, so I'm going to subscribe to the free plan so I can add up to 14. So let me do that. So I already subscribed, so I have one left. Let's try and add one. And let's try another. And here we have you've reached the limit. So this is another benefit. And the final benefit is the logs. So if you go to settings, audit trails, you will see that for every action we did, we have an audit trail or a log. So this will be available for SaasRock Enterprise subscribers. So DM me if you want to get this project up to this point, which is the same as SaasRock Core version. On the next video, I will talk about how to edit, how to customize the overview or edit view, and creating XMLs from the email attachments. This is the current edit view, but we want to have here the UUID, the XML, and the PDF file. Thanks.